So don't worry, I'm not going to give us a full anatomy and physiology lesson on the rumen, but there is a gentleman over there in a Ridley jacket and he might be able to do that for you at lunchtime. But we do just need to touch on the basics because it's very different to a calf. Obviously, when we get to the adult ruminant, we've got up to a 200-litre fermentation tank walking around inside that cow. 50 billion bacteria, probably as a minimum, plus a mix of fungi, protozoa, archaea, and other microbes functioning in that rumen. Now, the interesting thing when we talk about microbiomes is that we generally see, and a lot of our work starting to show this farm and these calves, if they're all treated in a similar way with a similar environment, will have a very similar microbiome. If we moved these calves onto another property, or you split them and half were raised elsewhere, they would grow up with quite a different microbiome, which is really interesting. And we're starting to see some work coming out showing that if there's different bacteria or different makeups of that microbiome, there's some really strong links to positive or negative impacts on average daily gain and health outcomes. So that's the importance of all of this. But what does it mean for you on the farm? So we all know that in that vat and that fully functioning rumen, we're actually feeding those microbes. So instead of feeding the cow's merely a vessel with a mouth and 4 legs to feed those microbes. They're actually doing the job of digestion. So the microbial fermentation is what breaks down the food that you give that cow to convert into energy and nutrients for her to uptake and to function. Where is that going? So obviously we need energy just for maintenance. Thermoregulation, cold, hot weather takes quite a lot of energy to regulate that, and it's quite interesting that the rumen operates a couple of degrees higher than the rest of the cow. Milk production and fetal growth is obviously a really important area because what we can divert in terms of energy into the milk, as well as our components, our fats, our proteins, that's what we're getting paid for. We do lose quite a bit in terms of waste and also in methane production. And regardless on your opinion of methane production, cows need to do this. They need to produce methane. It's a way of eliminating excess hydrogen from the rumens. The cows and rumens have become really clever over time, and they basically use the methanogenesis process to eliminate that excess hydrogen. But it is wasting energy. So there are supplements that can combat methane in a chemical fashion. What probiotics can do is actually divert some of that excess hydrogen into volatile fatty acids. So you're, instead of that, I suppose that process, meaning that you're losing energy through methane emissions, you're actually getting that rediverted to energy that could become milk for the cow. So it's kind of, while modest, I suppose, in suppression, it's a really useful way to convert that energy back into something that's profitable and beneficial for the cow. We also have to worry about disease. Disease can take away up to 70% of energy. So it's any wonder that, cows that are really sick can't produce milk and also start to lose weight. Our diet change, so what you work on with your nutritionist, has a really big impact on that microbial population. And that's because bugs like to, you'll get certain forms of bugs kind of digesting, I suppose, various particularly fibres and starches, and so that population will change over time with different introductions to different rations to optimally start utilising that feed. So it's really important that we are very careful with our transition in diets, because that upsets these bugs drastically, and you can really quickly tip to the wrong balance of good and bad bacteria and lose efficiencies there, right? So that's why we transition carefully. So I just wanted to run through that because obviously with dairy cows, we've got some really big jobs here. Our job as farmers, vets and people in this industry is to look after those cows so that they can provide as much milk as possible for us, they can stay healthy, and they can generate calves to obviously be replacement animals, but also as part of the joining process to continually milk and move through those lactations. This process is exceptionally demanding, particularly from a metabolic perspective, and requires a significant amount of energy, and it all sort of comes at once for the cow. So I love talking about the lactation curve. I've done a lot of work in my career each end from reactive to proactive, and I'm really enjoying being in the proactive space here. And since I started my career, there's a lot of diseases that I used to go out and treat, particularly in early lactation, that we just don't see anymore because there's so many advances in how we manage our cows and also how we feed our cows to mitigate some of these challenges, but it's particularly around this red circle here, which I'll quickly explain. So when the cow has her calf, anyone here, and there's a few of us that have had children, you know that as that child grows, as that calf grows, you don't have room inside to have that full rumen. So this 200-litre drum that could represent the capacity of that rumen and the capacity of dry matter intake probably sits around here. So at the time that she's about to give birth, she is probably having one of her lowest capacities to take in dry matter, but we also need her to be quickly able to get as much energy as possible to reach peak lactation. So that's why we put a lot of emphasis into that transitional period and how we manage, I suppose, her nutrition and her body condition score throughout lactation. So if you follow the solid line there, that's showing you what a milk production curve looks like. So has the calf, peaks very quickly, usually in the first 6 weeks, and then naturally starts to drop away across the rest of the lactation. We can't stop that process, but we do like to try and make it as gradual as possible with our feeding practices and making sure she remains healthy. While she's trying to recover from calving and we're trying to get her dry matter intake up so that she can have enough energy and have that excess energy to convert that into milk, we also are trying to join her very soon. So we know that there's some really good, strong links and correlations between body condition score and reproductive success. So we've got this red circle here, and basically what's that's showing is this is the prime time when our dry matter intake and the amount of energy that we need to give to this cow cannot be met by the demands of milking. So what we want to do is try and just make this period as easy as possible for her while we get her back up to that level. And then, as you can see, we spend the rest of the lactation kind of correcting that. You can see the green dotted line is, you know, and this obviously isn't to scale, but it gives you an idea of the curve, is her body weight going forward. So she drops away, milks off her back, is the term that's often used. We quickly correct that. We build her back up before she calves again, and that's kind of the cycle. And that becomes important when we start to explain how probiotics will help the adult dairy cow. So this is an interesting graph that I like to show, just because obviously we always want to promote longevity in our dairy herd. It's something that we look at a lot when we're consulting on farm is, you know, what's the average age of the cows in your herd. It gives us a good indication of what we should be expecting and how to approach what might be going on that farm. But if you have a look here, you can see a heifer coming in for her first lactation often will be producing around 25 to 30% less milk than she would be between 4th and 6th lactation, which are generally our most productive cows. So all this is showing is the peak is quite similar. The curve follows really similar trends, but we are trying to promote, obviously, keeping a healthy herd and keeping those cows to become their most profitable in your herd. It's not cheap, it's not easy to raise a calf. These guys behind me up to a productive cow, so let's get the most out of them. And also in terms of industry sustainability, let's try and keep those cows till they're most profitable. So what can MYLO do to help these cows? We know it's a really complex microbiome. It's not easy to make changes in that rumen quickly. What we're seeing is kind of two effects happening here. One is obviously we're supporting the immune system. Now that's as simple as if you're having pathogenic challenge, so there's bacteria that they're exposed to, a salmonella, for example, you're putting more good bacteria in there. And what probiotics do is not only are they good bacteria themselves, if they're doing their job properly, they also amplify the positive benefits of other good bacteria that make up that microbiome. So we also see immune modulation. So we're doing quite a bit of research in that area at the moment just to see what actual immune markers, how quick is that immune system to react when the body identifies disease. And that's one thing that probiotics can do really well, is make that immune system fine-tuned and work better. So we've got that level of support. Then we go into, are we actually improving feed digestion? So what our probiotics like to do, and in that fermentation vat of 200 litres, there's water, there's fibre, there's gases, and obviously there's also the rumen organ. Our bugs like to either cling to the side of the rumen wall and form a bit of a biofilm, but what they can do there, which is really interesting, is stop some penetration of pathogens going into the bloodstream. But they also, by producing different enzymes and supporting the other good bacteria in that gut, they will help with improved feed digestion. So like I was talking about before, helping redirect things such as excess hydrogen into different fatty acids. And some of the work we're doing at the moment is looking at, are we seeing changes in what volatile fatty acids are being produced and to what impact, to see exactly how we think that mode of action is occurring. So what happens from there, obviously, if we can squeeze an extra few % out of our feed, it's not going into wastage. We can use that either to maintain body condition, which we have seen in quite a lot of our studies, and we can also use that for more milk production. So essentially, it's just about making the whole process more efficient. I talked earlier about how there's a good link between reproductive success and improved body condition, but we're also studying at the moment what else is actually going on in terms of reproductive performance. So we're sampling uteruses and we're having a look at the ovulation cycle and seeing if we're seeing any differences when we're using a probiotic, because quite a lot of that anecdotal evidence from farmers, particularly using polar systems, are saying they're seeing much stronger heat indexes. So we're just working out if there's anything that we can substantiate there, which is really interesting. In terms of increased milk production, which, as I said, is a result of that improved energy efficiency, we're seeing up to 10% in our studies. This can be really variable based on obviously different farms, different seasons, different diets, and different capacities. But that's what we're seeing in our trial work consistently, and that's where we compare a control to a treatment on exactly the same property or in the same facility. In terms of the methane reduction, we're seeing around 7.5% reduction. Like I said, this worked by rediverting that byproduct into energy for the cow rather than a chemical way of just suppressing the methane that's being produced. And it's quite interesting that if you look at the average Victorian dairy farm of around 300 cows, that's a reduction of 100 tonnes of carbon dioxide and methane per year, which actually is the equivalent of 23 petrol pumps. So obviously the return on investment story is really important. We're not going to pay for a product, we're not going to go to the effort of putting something in if we don't think we're seeing a benefit. It is hard to measure the health impacts because obviously we don't know what would have occurred were you not giving the product, but we do see reductions in antibiotic usage on some of our properties that are using MYLO. It's around $40 per cow per lactation, giving the maintenance dose daily across that period. We would work like 305-day period. We've got a calculator, like Tom said, happy to plug in your details and your numbers, but as long as we're achieving a 1 to 2% increase, we are getting return on investment for that spend. So some of those farms able to achieve 10%, obviously that's fantastic. That's not going to be a good situation. But basically, we're giving a daily dose to the animals. It is important in our research. Thanks, Pete, on cue. It is important from our research that we are consistently topping up that probiotic daily. We do get some establishment within the rumen, and we do see a shift in that microbiome, but we are finding better benefits where we do give the product daily. So you can give it as a single dose daily, or you can split the dose into 5 meals twice a day. It doesn't make a big difference. One of the things I really struggled with, to be honest, when I started here was why are we giving calves and cows the same dose? And what we are giving in that dose is above 30 million live bacteria of the combination of the 3 lactobacillus species. And the answer I got initially was we had to start somewhere with a safety study. But then as our work progressed, we realised that because it is impacting them both differently, because cows are on it daily for a long time, so potentially 305 days year after year after year, and calves were trying to achieve a really quick transition to a functioning rumen quickly. We seem to be seeing consistent results, albeit different outcomes at the same level, obviously, of dose rate. The other thing to note is and I'll talk about this in a minute, but being a live microbial product, the product does eventually run out of food, hence the short expiry date. So to get that optimal balance of maintaining stability where the bugs like to be, this 10 ml dose or the 30 million live bacteria minimum that you're getting in every dose was a way to make sure that we can maintain our stability, which is something that we're really proud of. There's very limited regulation in this industry, and so if you're saying that you can get a 2-year shelf life, in a product such as this, you're just feeding dead bacteria and you're basically just giving the cow a tiny bit of extra protein. So we've got a big pump system. It's best to keep it out of UV light, just because obviously that can damage the bacteria and reduce your stability. And ambient temperature in South West Victoria is perfect. The bugs are quite fine to be warm. In fact, they love a rumen, so they love 40 degrees, that's no problem. Probably watching, we were getting, some places in Northern Vic or where Peter used to be from, if you're getting those really, really hot days and you're in the direct sunlight, that wouldn't be ideal. It is a certified organic product, so no withholding period, and like I just said, we do run 6 months shelf life to ensure that we maintain that viability and consistency of dose. So we recently undertook off our own back the FIAAA FAMIQS certification. It is a globally recognised certification, and it does mean that we run through everything from our manufacturing process all the way through to our viability and stability control. It was really important for us to take this on because as people start to understand biologicals a little more and there are more probiotics entering the marketplace, we felt a need to, I suppose, elevate our product and ensure that people understood that the viability and stability work that we do is gold standard and is recognised globally. Because of poor regulation in the market, I suppose, you can certainly see some acceptance issues with these kind of products because, there's snake oil theorists out there and they are dynamic in nature, and we're very used to, and I know Tom and I are very used to working with antibiotics and drugs that are all this many mils per kilogram or this many milligrams per kilogram. So what we're aiming to do is back up the products we use with peer-reviewed, published data, because we think that we genuinely believe in these products, and we think that if we can back it up to the same level of, antibiotics, drenches, etc., we can really start to make a difference in the space and give people a confidence that when they're using products like this, they should definitely see the benefits that we're finding in trial work. So yeah, just to recap, key points in calves, obviously, we're getting advanced rumen development, which leads to heavier and healthier calves, and in cows we're improving that, I suppose, digestion efficiency, which leads to healthier cows, but also improvements such as higher milk yields and better body condition score with a positive return on investment.